3, 2, 1.
All right, guys. Welcome to, I've actually come up with a name, Joe, and I wanted to see what you thought of it. Little Joe, Big Deal, Bodybuilding Podcast. Fuad's got the real, Fuad already took the real bodybuilding podcast, which is kind of cool, but I guess we can't steal that because it's already taken. I don't know if you copyrighted it, but Big Deal, Little Joe, or Little Joe, Big Deal. We'll run by it with some people and see if we can.
I like it.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Ian. We got Ian's approval. Today's a pretty big day for the podcast. It's only our third episode, but we already have a superstar on the channel, and which makes me super nervous, kind of, because in here. And it's weird because I somewhat know Ian, like he's from the same town and whatnot, but it's still nerve-wracking, because he's got, a lot of insight, and I don't want to bore you guys to death with a bad podcast. So
we have also don't worry.
We were going to have Big Ramy on. By the way, Joe, everybody's been asking for Big Ramy now on my comments. There's actually been,
I saw a few people do that,
yeah, and it's funny because I think they may be, from other countries, so they didn't really understand the humor.
Yeah.
Big Ramy is going to be on. Can you imagine Big Ramy on a podcast too? Interesting.
They definitely get a lot of views. That's for sure.
I don't know if I've really ever seen. I think he's been on RX Muscle before, but I don't know if I've seen him on much podcasts or longer style interviews like that now.
Yeah, no, I think he still needs an interpreter somewhere there.
Yeah.
I don't know, but maybe we could get Ramy on one day, right, Joe?
I think we could do it one day for sure.
Today we've got the articulate and ever-knowing Iain Valliere.
Mm.
I see Ian as an expert on kind of a jack of all trades because you do a little bit of coaching. You're definitely one of the key players right now in the world. So you have those experiences.
Sure.
You've got your hands into the marketing now too. So you're well-versed in this whole thing. So Ian, if you want to go on about yourself, why don't you tell us, I know you're in prep right now. For 6 weeks out, or is it 5?
Yeah, 5.5 now, yeah.
5.5, yeah. I was just looking at Patrick's post. Patrick, your new coach.
Mm-hmm.
He's not your new coach any longer, but I was looking at his post, and Jesus, man, sounds like you guys aren't even ramping it up yet, and you're already in good.
Yeah, it's been a really good prep. I mean, I think, in the short time me and him have worked together, we've really got a good rhythm going and really, gotten to a roll of things and figured it out. So, I'm definitely very happy with the way things have been, progressing into this show for sure.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, actually. He's not so new anymore. You've been working with him for just about a year now, right?
Just about a year, yeah. I guess it would have been about 2 weeks before Tampa Pro last year. So, yeah, it would have been somewhere in the beginning, middle of July. So about a year now, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and the progress has been really good. And what's really amazing, and I was talking to Joe about this the other day, is what's really amazing about both you guys is that you've still stayed on point throughout this whole scenario. Mm-hmm. It's been difficult for anyone,
definitely, yeah.
Professional lives, and of course you guys are professionals, but I think every professional has struggled with their careers right now because it's been difficult just to maintain and stay on track with all the obstacles that have been put in place.
Yeah, it's just a lot of uncertainty, right? So it's hard to maintain that focus, especially when it's, such uncertain times like that. Definitely, yeah.
I'm going to throw this out at both of you guys. Joe, you're traveling as well, right?
Yeah.
And Ian, you've already, I hate when people go over the same thing in different podcasts, but this is more recent. So I want to know, I saw your one with Ron Harris from Muscular Development.
Yep.
We're talking about doing whatever it takes to get to the show.
Yeah, I'll do whatever I can. Obviously I may be limited in that whatever I can still might not get me there. I mean, that is obviously a possibility that, you know, I'm hoping for the best, but prepared for the worst, you know, so it kind of is what it is. You know, I'll do what I can that's within my control, but no, I mean, you know, obviously my eyes are set on Tampa, and, you know, whatever, you know, logistics I need to go through to try and get there, I'll definitely, you know, tap out every avenue that's possible before I, you know, give that one up and aim for the next show. So yeah, no, I mean, it's, you know, whatever I can do that's within my control is kind of what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And that's a good approach, because you keep gunning for the goal regardless, you know?
Yeah.
But Joe, what about you? Like, have you thought it through? I guess the borders, your show is what, 12 weeks now, right? Or 11?
Yeah, California Pros be like 11 and a half weeks now.
Okay.
Because I basically, like, once the whole thing started, I took a step back for a couple months and then just kind of, you know, gave myself a little bit of a break, and still was training and everything. But then I just decided, like, you know, once things started to open up more, I was like, okay, like, you know, they rescheduled some of the shows, and Cali was one that I wanted to do back in May. So I picked that one, and, you know, I was looking at traveling and stuff, and it looks, you know, you can fly to the States right now. It's just a matter of, you know, if something happens with the shows being put on or not, you know. So
Okay.
as of right now, I'm still, you know, looking. I haven't booked anything, but you know, I'm just watching to see how things go.
I'm gonna leave it till like probably 2 to 3 weeks out before I book, and just to be sure. I mean, you know, if you got to spend a little extra money just to you know, be a little safer with it, it's more worth it than booking the flight and just get rescheduled a bunch of times. So I'm on the same boat as Joe here. I haven't even booked anything yet, so I'll kind of hold out till last minute with that, and then, you know, kind of see where the climate is with everything at that point, and then kind of go from there based off, you know, whatever intel I have. But I mean, I've even seen now with shows like California, they're having some shows right now, and they're having like mandatory mask wearing in the show. So like, I've seen people on stage wearing a mask on stage. So then all the suit companies are jumping on the bandwagon. It's like, well, let's make masks that match the suits, and, you know, it's a whole now, right? So
we have a proactive wear.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, you're wearing your blue posing trunks. You can have a nice blue thing with fucking rhinestones on it to match your suit, you know. So the possibilities are endless for the style now. So I mean, that's not the case. I mean, I feel like it's hard enough posing on stage. If I have to pose with a friggin' mask on, I'll probably kill myself. But you know, if it's what needs to be done, I guess it's kind of what needs to be done, right?
Yeah, I mean, it will bode well with like the bikini division, I guess. It's a fashion thing at this point.
No, but even then, those girls, they all want to get their makeup done nice, and they want to show off a nice face. They get their teeth whitened. I mean, you don't want to cover up half their damn face in the mask. They want to, you know, show it off. So
it's good. Save them some money.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you look at it that way, but let's be serious, they're probably still going to do their full face of makeup anyways, and then just put a mask on top of it. They're not going to just like do their top half of makeup. They're going to do the whole thing, and then they're just covering it with a mask.
Definitely true. I don't want to get the bikini girls coming at us with but if it's got to be done, I mean, it's gotten to a point where, and I don't want to talk about my political opinions. You know, it's gotten to a point. It's dangerous to be wearing those masks on stage, in my opinion. Yeah. Especially at you know, if people have been dabbling with, you know, they're dehydrated, right? You know, they're dehydrated and you're wearing a mask. That can't be good. That can't be good.
You know, you're already talking about, you know, putting your body through, you know, high levels of exertion. You're, like you said, you're depleted and you're tired, and, you know, you're going on stage, and then, you know, like any of us have been on a bodybuilding stage. When you're in there and you know, go through a few call outs, you're fucking winded, man. Like, that's like the hardest workout you've ever done. You're hitting 3, 4, 5 rounds of posing. I mean, that's not like a walk in the park. That's really tough. You know, you're winded. You get off stage, you're seeing stars, and you're, you know, completely gassed trying to catch your breath, you know. So you're doing that and then throwing over something to restrict your breathing a lot. I mean, that's getting kind of scary at that point. So, you know, hopefully it's just wear a mask until like right before you step on stage and then take it off. But, you know, I guess that's another thing we just got to kind of, you know, play by ear at this point, right?
What about audiences? Does anyone know about the audiences?
I'm not sure. I mean, they have had some shows down in the States that have had audiences, and they were just having people sit in like every second chair, and the aisles were spread out a little more. And stuff like that, just like trying to practice social distancing as much as they could within the venue and in the audience. But I mean, there's only so much you can do, right? So it's, you know, I mean, people will still need to step on stage and be somewhat near each other to be able to be compared fairly. And, you know, there's still going to be things that have to be done, right?
Yeah. Okay, well, I hope you guys make it to those shows. Like,
Me too.
I'm sure you guys do. I know how devastating it can be. Like, I've had an injury before a show, and like what I do is nowhere near the caliber of what you guys are doing. So
Still holds weight though.
it's frustrating, right? It's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, though, like, you know, I know for me, and I'm sure for Joe too, like, you know, once you get to that point, if you get in shape, you know, I'm just looking at it as if I get in shape for Tampa, they can't postpone shows forever, you know? So like if I'm in shape for Tampa and it's like, okay, well, Tampa I can't get to, but New York's in 4 weeks. It's like, okay, well then I'll hold my condition for 4 weeks. And if I can get into New York, I get in New York. You know, obviously there's going to have to be a point where you have to call it. But, you know, I think I could easily hold that look for, you know, 8 to 10 weeks without feeling too shitty, you know, and kind of see what's on the horizon at that point. You know, and if at that point, if it gets to, you know, we're into November and I haven't gone on a show yet, then maybe I'd hang it up. But, you know, at least I would, you know, hold on for the shows. Like, you know, we have Puerto Rico, we have California, we have New York, we have Tampa. So, I mean, there's a bunch of shows in that vicinity there. So, you know, I'll at least hold on. If I can't get to Tampa, I'll hold on till at least all those shows are done and try my best to get into any one of those. And if that doesn't work, then, you know, obviously make the decision at that time. But, you know, once you're in shape, it's, you know, the work is done. It's just, you know, maintaining at that point, you know, trying your best to get into whatever you can get into, right?
That's awesome. Joe, you too? Like, you following the same strategy, or?
Yeah, like you said, you know, it's like once you're in shape, you can hold that look for a few weeks, and it's not hard to hold it once you're there, you know, or at least stay like within striking range, you know. So that's kind of my game plan. And then worst case, if, like you said, you know, if we're not able to get on stage for whatever reason, if they keep delaying things or canceling things, then, you know, you can do photo shoots and et cetera, just to make it worth it, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hoping that for sure that by, you know, well, for Iain, 5.5 weeks, but, you know, by September for myself, that, like, you know, it's clear to, you know, compete and not have to worry about if it's going to get canceled or not, you know?
Yeah. Iain, death face is in, man. I just noticed that.
It's starting to come. I got the beard hiding it a little bit at least. So, but yeah, my shape, I'm sure it'd look a lot worse.
I don't know. I find the beard accentuates it. What's the word I'm looking? It makes it worse, right?
Yeah, maybe.
It exacerbates it. Yeah, especially when you get that like long beard and it looks straggly.
Yeah. So then you get a little more Skeletor looking. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, but it's looking good. So I could only imagine the rest of the package. We've gotten these we got these pictures in 2 weeks or last week, right?
Which ones?
The one from Patrick on his Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, he posts up some random ones here and there. You know, some of them he'll post and they'll be a couple days old or a week old or something like that. But, you know, and all the ones he does are kind of like half crop. You can kind of see, you kind of can't, you know. So, yeah, I think he puts the side chest ones up on his profile maybe 2 weeks ago, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. But I think that's the most recent, like, full ones he's posted. Where there was a front lat one, I think, but it was kind of cropped. You couldn't really see too much. But yeah, no, I mean, we're definitely in a really good spot. So I'm very happy with where we're at, for sure.
And I had to ask, one of the main topics I wanted to touch on today was resilience in bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's been coming up a lot. I don't know if you guys saw the Guy Cisterino video where he talked about all the bullshit that comes with bodybuilding. The successful bodybuilders are the ones who kind of train through the pain and just make it through those bad days. Because some days where obviously I'm approaching 40, and I did some T-bar rows on Sunday, and Monday I was annihilated. I swear to God, you guys are still young.
Yeah.
It gets worse every year. It really does. But I mean, you guys are at a pro level, so the demands you're putting on your body, I would assume that you're in pain for at least a day after a good workout, right?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, like, you know, with anything, it's just, you know, general wear and tear on your body. I mean, you know, your knees, your elbows, I mean, things get beat up over time, and, you know, and you just kind of learn to, you know, tailor your training to kind of, you know, work around it the best you can, and, you know, and find the exercises that aggravate things and don't. And I mean, it's just a learning process as you know, get older and your body changes, right? I mean, certain things change. I mean, like, you know, my knees have always been kind of crappy, and they've got worse as I've got older, but my legs have still been able to progress because I've change my training around what feels good and what doesn't, and, learn to get the best out of the exercises that I can do. So, it's all just a learning process, and kind of, learning to adapt to, your situation and get the most out of it. Right.
And some people would give up though. And I think that was Sister Reno's point, that some people, they don't make it past amateur level, or even at the amateur level, they won't even make it to a show because they just can't get over not eating. So there's this element of resilience that's needed to be successful. And you got prime examples. I think I said it in our last podcast that I've seen Joe and I've seen yourself, like you guys will do what it takes. Like you eat every meal on time. I call Joe OCD because I think he's OCD, to be honest, but that's a characteristic I wish I had, to be a little bit more, I guess, harder on myself and do what needs to be done. And you guys obviously have done that to get to this level. Yeah,
and I think it's also like it's a learning over time too. Like when you know the difference that those small things make, like for me, I know if I miss a meal in a day or miss 2 meals in a day, or, these things, that I can see a significant difference in my progress and how I look the next day, or, my performance the next day. I can see these immediately as an acute response to what I'm doing the day previous or 2 days previous. So it's almost like you're almost like fear driven to keep on that track, like if I'm not getting these meals, I know what the detriment to this can be. Right. So for me, it's, I always want to keep in that same thing, doing the exact same thing I did the day before, and keep doing that every day, because I know that that's the path that I need to be the most, ample to success, right? So that's really what it comes down to for me.
Yeah, there's a fine line between success and neurosis, I think.
Yeah.
It's
such a for sure, because it's such a 24/7 thing, right? I mean, but at the end of the day, especially when you're getting to the size like guys like Joe and I are, I mean, those meals are so pertinent to be getting in. I mean, you need to be, if you're missing one meal, that's, 20% of, 15, 20% of your daily intake. You add those up, 1 meal a week, or 1 meal every 4 or 5 days that you're missing here or there. You add that up over a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. What difference is that making? It's scary to think about, right? I mean, if you just, had that little bit of extra, bit of tenacity and just got those meals in, stayed up a little later, got in the meal, stuff like that, the days you don't feel like eating or the days you don't feel like training, you do it, you compound those over 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. Like I said, I mean, that makes a big fucking difference,
You just said, stay up later for the extra meal. I've always been curious about this because during prep, I have trouble sleeping. Most people do. Do you think sleep is as important as the food? Like, do you think food supersedes the sleep time? Like, I mean, you could go on 4 hours sleep, but if you fuck up
I would say, in my mind, I would never miss a meal for sleep. Like if it's like, say it's getting late and I fell asleep on the couch and I woke up, it's 4 o'clock in the morning and I still have 1 meal, I wouldn't just be like, oh no, I need to get my sleep, that's more important. I would get up, I would eat the meal, and then I'd go back to bed. I mean, also, obviously I do have the luxury of not working a day job that I can sleep during the day. If I sleep 4 hours at night, I can wake up, I can eat breakfast, I can go back to bed for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, So I mean, I obviously have the luxury of, the flexibility within my schedule with that. But no, I mean, my schedule is super weird. I mean, I usually don't eat my first meal till noon, 12:30, and I eat my last meal at 3:30 in the morning, So, I mean, I'm kind of all over the place in terms of time. But I always make sure that I am getting sufficient rest. And say I only sleep 6 hours at night, I'll wake up, I'll eat my first meal, do my cardio, whatever. Then I'll go, watch Netflix and sleep for another 2 hours, wake up, eat again, and go train, So I'm always making sure that I'm getting adequate everything. It's just not always in, a very set order, right?
So for like an amateur trying to make it pro, I guess you could say that there's some flexibility in doing what you're doing as long as you're doing it.
Yeah, and I need to not use things as like an excuse or a crutch, right? Yeah. Like it's easy to be like, to use that mindset almost as like a laziness factor. Like, be like, oh, I'm too tired, sleep's more important than my meal. But it's like, you don't actually believe that. You're just doing that because sleeping is easier than getting up to eat the meal. Which it is. I mean, you're already tired. It's easier just to go to bed than it is to get up and eat. I mean, of course that's easier. It is for everybody, So yeah, we'll convince ourselves of what is most convenient. It's like it's just like the days. It's like when you're a little sore, you're a little tired. You're like, oh, I should probably take the day off training. It'd probably be better for me. It's like, would it really though? Or are you just trying to make yourself think that because that's what's conducive to how you're feeling at the time, right? And I think that's what most people do is they justify their own means, through that, whatever, the activity is, whether it's sleeping or eating or training or whatever, what is the most simple for them, they're always going to justify in their mind, right?
Yeah, for sure. And props to Joe. I wanted to bring this up since we were talking about it and I was thinking about it, about rationalizing things. I think you could have easily bitched out on that leg workout yesterday, or was it Friday?
Monday?
Your Instagram, or it was
Monday, yeah. The live
Yeah.
workout, yeah.
That was amazing because
That was rough.
we're gonna die. They were. I don't know if you saw this, Ian, but Joe was doing a garage workout, and it was one of the humid days. Like I don't know what the humidity factor's been.
35, 40 degrees outside, yeah.
Yeah, it's been brutal, and he had it didn't look like you guys had any fans, or it was raining too, right? So the heat
Yeah, it was hot.
getting in there. Yeah, you were drenched.
I was literally soaked from top to bottom. It was most I've ever sweat in my life training. So I almost passed out after the squats though. That was pretty intense.
Yeah. But you do what it takes, right? So that's why you guys are who you are. I mean, that's why you're here.
See, but then the point I'm trying to say, which, you guys are right, is that someone with that lesser mindset would have validated a reason why training in that heat would have been detrimental. They would have done the opposite, and they would have said, oh, training in this heat, I'll get dehydrated, it won't be good for me, or, blah, 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 or, I'm at higher risk for injury. They'll make up some bullshit in their mind to justify why they shouldn't be doing it. Instead of just accepting the fact, it's too hot, I'm a fucking pussy, I don't want to work out. Which is the reality of the situation. They almost do the opposite of where they justify a reason why it would be detrimental for them to do it. And that's what I'm saying with the food and the workouts too. They'd be like, oh, it would be bad for me to miss this hour of sleep. It's like, no, just sleeping's easier, so you're going to sleep instead of eating the meal. You're going to, rationalize what is the easiest thing to do.
Ian, is that the problem with kids today, like the younger generation of fitness enthusiasts, or whatever the fuck you want to call them? Because I watch, obviously I'm on a lot of YouTube because I'm a huge bodybuilding fan, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you are. But I'll watch and Greg Doucette well, I think he coached at one point. So Greg will, and no disrespect to Greg, I agree with him on, a lot of things, but he'll help us rationalize that we can eat stuff like protein bars and, French toast with egg whites, still be very successful. Yeah. Which is a really good question I wanted to lead into. Maybe now would be a good lead in, because I actually pulled out to people, and one of the guys from Popeyes, our local supplement store, wanted to know why guys like yourself and Chris, and I think probably you're his coach, so you would prescribe his diet. Mm-hmm. He noticed, and Joe, the chicken and rice diet. Why not anabolic French toast and protein powder? And I swear this question isn't coming from me.
I mean, it's a tough question to answer. I mean, really there's no one way to skin a cat. I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do anything. I mean, and I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I worked with Greg and I looked fucking awesome. I mean, to date, one of my best packages conditioning wise was working with Greg. I mean, that's Ottawa's 2013. I was pretty much as lean as people can be. And that was working with Greg. I turned pro working with Greg, and I was eating, fucking popcorn and protein French toast and protein pudding and ice cream and all this bullshit. And did it work? Absolutely. There comes a point where, it's really, you want to really fine tune things. And I find when you're using those kind of foods like that, it gets a little harder to get really intricate with things, Okay. And that's really what it was for me. I mean, the only reason I stopped working with Greg, in my mind, is when I turned pro, I knew that I need to grow a lot. And I know Greg is really, not a bulking guy, because I know bulking is such a stupid word, but I think I needed to really push the food more than Greg was willing to at that point, to get into that next, upper echelon of size. And I just didn't feel that was something that Greg and I were, quite in the same wavelength with. And, eating those kind of foods, that's a lot of volume of food to eat to do that kind of stuff. So, it's great for what it is. And I think for, how Greg does things with the average person, that's not necessarily an elite competitor, because the most people Greg works with is not elite competitors. Most of the people he works with are, the average Joe with a good chunk of change in the bank that wants to look good and, just is training just to look good and just wants to, have a diet that's, easy for them to follow in their day-to-day life, where they can eat some foods that they enjoy while still making some good progress. So I think for what he does in that aspect, I think the diet is great. I mean, I think for the average person to adhere to that, to get some good, variance in their diet and stuff like that, it's really good. But, you know, once you're getting to, you know, the next level, like where guys like us are at, I think you need a little more control over things. And that's kind of where I came from, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I think it's a good alternative, even for amateur competitors, because, you know, most amateurs are working, very busy. They're flexible. Like they don't have as flexible schedules. They have families, obligations, but they still want to do their best. Not everybody aspires to be a pro and make it to that level. But those who do, I agree, would probably have to adapt to a better strategy. And I was actually listening to Patrick again, and that's when, I mean, when he talks about food timing and, you know, how he schedules in the meals, it's really intricate. Like his strategies are really intricate, as opposed to
he's very, very smart and detail-oriented person. I mean, even work with him, I've taken more progress pictures this week than I've taken entire preps with other coaches, you know. So I mean, I'm like doing twice a day, every day, you know, pictures, like that kind of stuff. I mean, you know, my diet's adjusted throughout the day, you know, every day, you know, based off what I'm training, how I look in the morning versus the evening. I mean, there's so much, you know, fine tuning and fine detailing with him. And do I think that that's absolutely necessary for everybody? Absolutely not. Do I think for me, it's worked very well? Definitely, you know, so,
yeah.
And like I said before, I mean, there's no one way to skin a cat. Do I think that, you know, you could put Chris on a Greg Doucette diet and he could still probably get peeled? Sure. I mean, you know, you're talking about people that train hard. They're not, you know, 99 percentile of genetics. I mean, you know, could you put him in a caloric deficit of any sort and he get peeled? Fucking probably, you know. So, you know, I don't think there's really one way to answer that. You know, for Chris, the biggest thing is obviously with his autoimmune disease, we have to be very, very careful with what we put in his body, you know. You know, and he responds very differently to certain foods versus others. And, you know, Greg is on a more like calories in, calories out basis, you know, meeting your protein requirements, and then everything else you can kind of fit in with those foods. And it's not like macro counting as opposed to just calorie counting. And for Chris, that just doesn't really work well for him. You know, for him, you know, especially once we get into Olympia prep, you know, you could feed him 10 grams of carbs and the guy will gain 50 pounds of water. I mean, like his body with his autoimmune is just so wacky with these things, you know. You really need to be very, very careful with what you put in them. So, but no, I mean, I absolutely think, you know, it's a good question. There's not really an answer to that. I mean, you know, if you want to follow a diet like Greg and you think that will be what will help you succeed the most, go for it. I mean, the best diet is one that you can adhere to the most and the longest and consistently with, right? I mean, if you can follow Greg's diet every day for 20 years, or you can follow my diet for one day, I mean, it's obviously you do Greg's diet. I mean, and vice versa. I mean, I find I have absolutely no issue following, you know, a very strict, you know, bodybuilder style chicken rice kind of diet. And I think, yeah, you know, I get good results out of that. So, you know, that's just kind of where my head's at. So there's not really a right or wrong answer to any of that. I mean, you know, we've all done different diets and, you know, the outcome at the end of the day can always be very similar, but, you know, that's kind of what it comes down to, what you like and what you think you'll, you know, succeed the most with.
I like that answer. It's a great response, actually. And there's so many avenues we could bridge into now, because you mentioned Chris and I wanted to talk about that.
Sure.
Prep, but there's also, you know, we never answered the question of whether, and I just wanted you to answer this one first. And Joe, I think we talked about this last time, and I know your opinion. Are young people making excuses though? Like aside from Greg's diets, like, and Greg will talk about this himself. He'll validate that kids are younger, the younger generation, they don't want to train hard because they're afraid of overtraining.
Yeah, I mean, I think now with so much knowledge at your fingertips with the internet and with social media, people get these ideas in their head. And I think, like we said, they almost want to validate them. I think that in every generation, there's going to be people that work harder and people that don't work as hard. I don't think that's a generational thing. I think if you go to 1990 or 1970 or 2020, I mean, I don't think there's necessarily people work harder or less hard. I mean, there's tons of very good pro bodybuilders now, probably more, I would say, you know, that's going to be an opinionated thing, but I think the quality of bodybuilding now is better than it's ever been, you know, across the board. Yeah. And, you know, if people weren't working as hard, that wouldn't really make sense. Right. So, you know, I still think that there are lots of people that are working as hard and that are still willing to do what it takes. But then, like I said, with, you know, so much knowledge at their fingertips, there is people reading online that, you know, you shouldn't train this much, or you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. And then, like we said before, you know, they get back into this, you know, self-validation of these things. So, I think it's almost like too much knowledge is causing that issue for people. And I think that's really social media and internet causing that, which is the biggest variable that's changed over the last, 20, 30, 40 years. So I think it really comes down to that. I don't think people as a whole at the elite levels want to work less hard. I think the people that want to work hard still work hard, and there's still successful people at the top ranks. But just like anything, I bet if you went, like I said, back to 1990, there's going to be tons of guys that were, going to Gold's Gym that wanted to be big bodybuilders, and they were doing, half-assed effort and training not as hard as the guys that were there, that were being successful. I mean, that's not a generational thing, in my opinion. It's just come more to the light now with social media and all these things, right?
Right. Well, yeah, and I agree with you there. Like, it may not be cause of that the generation, I still think the new generation's a little entitled. But you're right, there's so much information floating around. Back when I was growing up, there were only forums, if that, a couple of web-based forums. And you could barely find any advice about, I don't know, diet, nutrition. And it would mostly be about products they were selling on those forums, right? So we didn't have information overload at all.
Well, and back then, like, so you go back 20, 30 years, I mean, people were just emulating what the top guys were doing. If the top guys were going to the gym and training for 6 hours, then everyone thought that's what they needed to do. So, but now when you, like I said, when you have, so many sources online, there'll be guys that are saying, you should only train 2 days a week, upper body, lower, push, pull, split, or, there's so many people saying these things that people want to rationalize because they are easier. I don't think that's that people inherently want to work less hard. I think if you put this same, tools at the disposal of people 30 years ago, you would have ended up with the same thing. I don't think it's the people. I think it's the resources available that have changed the dynamic of it. And I think, if you put the internet in 1995, like it is today, you would have ended up with the exact same thing, because people would have been reading online that, this dude with a PhD says to train twice a week, and that rest is the most important, and that you should only do 4 sets, because if you do 6 sets, you're overtraining. And, there's always going to be something, and people always want to do what is the easiest in an aspect, but that's not a generational thing, in my opinion. That's just a, social, or that's just an internet and a media driven thing, right? So.
Okay. So keep it simple, stupid, like the KISS principle.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I don't think that there's lots of bodybuilders are super complicated guys too. I mean, you get guys like, hypertrophy coach, and their training styles are, super, super complex. And they do a lot of, very intricate movements, or Ben Pakulski kind of style stuff. And I don't think that's wrong. I think there's been obviously an evolution of certain things, but I think when you just break it down to its grassroots, especially for someone starting out, I think that they need to not be concerning themselves with that kind of complex shit at all. I mean, I think you need to, like you said, keep it simple, stupid, especially when you're, just building the foundations for your physique. I think, to start getting into overly complex things. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. I mean, you'll hear kids that have doing their first show, and they're asking questions about taking growth hormone and insulin. You're like, wait, it's step 1 here, man. Like, you don't get your driver's license and, go buy a fucking Formula 1 car. I mean, it's, learn to drive first, and go buy your Honda Civic, and, it's step 1. And I think that's where people go, they see, and this is going right back to the, having the internet. I mean, they read online that this is what pro bodybuilders are doing X, Y, Z. Well, I need to be doing the same instead of doing, the proper progressive steps. So I think that's just really what the biggest dynamic change has been.
Okay, good. Joe, you in agreement with?
Yeah, like I agree what he says there, because like, it's like I was saying the other day, like, you'll hear the guys that were in the 90s like saying like, oh, the conditioning today isn't the same, but it's like, I think the conditioning I had last year was pretty good. So, you can't
I think today the conditioning is significantly better than it's ever been. And people can argue this left, right, and center. You can pull up a few, key players back then, but if you go and pull up like bullshit show number 1, like, Toronto Pro 1999, other than first or second place, everyone is in extremely mediocre condition. Outside of the Olympia or the Arnold Classic, guys back then, they weren't in exceptional condition. I mean, you look at Lee Priest or some of these guys, Nasser, these guys, when they were outside of the Olympia, their conditioning was what we would now consider guest posing conditioning on a good day. Soft glutes, soft hamstrings, minor separation in their quads. They all had good abs, sure. They would have some, lower back water and fat, things that just are completely unacceptable now in pro bodybuilding. It's, if you're not showing up on stage with, crazy striated glutes and hamstrings, I mean, you're not in the running for winning a show unless the show is a joke. But At the pro level, I mean, this is what the standard of conditioning is. And I think that's wildly better now than it's ever been. I think, if you compare mid-Olympia, mid-90s Olympia to 2020 Olympia, okay, then you can start to make an argument. But if you're comparing just as a whole across the board, every single show throughout the year, I mean, I would be very hard pressed to find a show like, Vancouver Pro this year, where you had me, Nathan, Hottie, Lucas Osladil. You could go into the second, third call out, and there was guys that were peeled out of their mind, top tier bodybuilders that were peeled out of their mind in the second and third call out. You'd be really have a hard time finding a show in 1995 outside the Arnold or like the Night of Champions or something like that with that kind of conditioning and that kind of completeness in an entire lineup,
Dude, that makes me think of the Arnolds this year, because I was looking at Morgan St. How do you say his
he was dead last. The guy was fucking 3.5%
peeled, and he was like the biggest man I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, how tall is that guy? 6'9", 6'7", 6'8"?
No, he's like 6'4", 6'5". But I mean, 6'4", 6'5" on a pro bodybuilding stage is still gigantic,
Yeah, and he was peeled. I mean, he was peeled.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly think if you put that physique on a stage in 1999, it would be extremely competitive. There's good size there. The conditioning would have been leagues above the average guy doing a pro bodybuilding show then. But now, that doesn't quite cut it. I mean, everyone else was in good condition, plus, more complete physiques. I mean, it's just not quite the same.
And this is great, because I still wanted to segue into this, but then I decided to take that out of the podcast because I thought it would be boring to talk about like old school versus new school. But I'm glad you brought it up, Ian, because it's...
Yeah, see, there's also a different dynamic because I think guys back then were doing a lot more shows. I think if you got the average guy, they bang out a European tour of doing 8-9 shows in succession, which guys don't do that now. I mean, I'm probably one of the most active pros, like guys like me or Lucas, and I'll do 4 or 5 shows a year. And that's like very uncommon now. Where back then, like almost everyone, unless you were, a top 3, top 5 Olympian, you were banging out 5, 6. I mean, how many shows was Milos doing a year? Fucking 20 shows a year, So, I mean,
they do that tour, the tour.
Yeah, they would do the European tour, and then you have the American circuit that was earlier in the year. They would all go do Flex Pro and Night of Champions. They would all do those. Then they do the Olympia. Then they do the European tour. So some of these guys were doing 8, 10, 12, 15 shows a year. So yeah, obviously to maintain that kind of conditioning all year is a lot more difficult. And I can understand the rationale behind saying, hey, let's not try to push the conditioning too hard for longevity's sake. And because no one else is pushing it that hard, I can still be competitive with this physique. I understand that. I mean, like perfect example is like, that Peter Molnar guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, him. Like, he'll do sometimes in these weird European shows, he'll bang out 10 shows in a row, but he's, maybe in really good condition for one of those shows, and then the rest of them, his conditioning's pretty mediocre, but he'll still win them all. So I think that's the same kind of thing. It's just being active and still getting there and getting the paychecks and getting on stage to be competitive. And because they really saw it as their job, where now guys try and look really good for one show, try and get their Olympia qual, and that's it, So I think that just the dynamic of the competitive state has changed a bit. So I think, any of those guys back then had the potential and they would show up at the Olympia like that. But to say that guys nowadays are in less condition, I mean, is completely false. I mean, like you said, Morgan St. is completely dead last at that show, and the guy was peeled out of his mind,
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. And I guess, like Kevin Levrone would only train, you're mentioning these old school guys,
mm-hmm.
and on the tour, and this is what I've never understood. According to Kevin Levrone, after his accident, he would grow into the show, or the shows, and then he'd maintain that and then lose it all for 6-7 months.
Look at Sean Roden. I mean, Sean Roden, Pittsburgh Pro guest posing was people ripped him to shreds because of that. Because he'd taken a whole off season. He probably took TRT dose test, probably ate off diet for majority of his meals. His training probably wasn't down there training with Charles Glass every day. So his physique was obviously very, very subpar for an Olympia champion. I mean, it was subpar for, a top level amateur, but then he'll probably end up being the exact same weight as he was fat in a guest posing on the Olympia stage and won the Olympia. So, I mean, it's still a thing guys do, obviously. And if you're at that top level of genetics and you think you can do it, and, especially when you're someone like Sean, where you're 46 years old, maybe that's a smart decision. Who knows, so there's always going to be people that do things differently. And like Kevin, obviously that's unorthodox for any top tier bodybuilder like Sean or or Kevin were doing, but I mean, obviously it worked for them, but it obviously begs the question then, like, how much better could they have been if they did it all year round, right? So,
Can I bridge this into Chris now? I want to
sure,
talk to Chris. One, I've got to say that I've had the most respect for all the adversity he's gone through, like with, that it's a very rare condition, right? And I'm not sure if it's the same one my wife has, but I do believe it's the same.
Yeah, IgA neuropathy, yeah.
Yeah, that is what she was diagnosed with a long time ago, and it's genetic. She was born with it.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I would assume it would have been devastating, but he made it through, and I think that, when you talk about resilience and perseverance, I think that's the prime example. But bridging on that, I watched a lot of Chris's videos, and I noticed he does kind of take it easier in the off season. You're his coach, so I would assume even in training, he takes break days.
Yeah, it's obviously a little different for Chris than when you're comparing to like an open bodybuilder, because Chris can't grow, Chris can't put on 10 pounds of stage weight. Chris can't put on 5 pounds of stage weight, So it's like Flex Lewis. I mean, I don't know if you ever, watched when Flex Lewis was still doing 212. I mean, his off seasons were like eating 3 meals a day, 4 meals a day. His workouts were not what they were when he'd be prepping for a show, because he had to limit himself. I mean, his body wanted to grow and wanted to be heavier than that, right? So, obviously he had to be very careful in his off season to not blow up, to 260, 270. And then, when you're dieting down for a show and you have to push it that hard to lose tissue, the look is never the same. You're better to just stay lighter in the off season and then push that weight down instead of getting super heavy and then having to compromise tissue. The look is definitely compromised when you have to push down that hard. So for Chris, it's really, a couple of things. Obviously with his IgA, we want to put as minimal stress on his body unless it's absolutely necessary. From a training standpoint to a drug standpoint to everything, we obviously don't want to take any risks that are unnecessary, right? For him to be pushing, heavy cycles in the off season, or to be eating a ton of food or, high protein or anything like this to try and, push his physique to, more than it needs to be, is just reckless at this point in my mind. I mean, he clearly has a physique that even when he was suffering with his worst flare-up in 2018, was still second place at the fucking Olympia. I mean, this guy can show up at 80%. He can be top 5 in the world. I mean, every time. So, in our mind, it was, you're better to err on the side of caution than to do, reckless decisions to try and get an extra 2, 3, 4, 5% out of his physique. And if we have a flare-up in the off season, that could be even more detrimental, So we really just have to, play it super careful with that. And like I said, he's already, his weight cap is 230. This past year was the lightest he'd been. I think it was 227. So, he only had 3 pounds in there. And that was like, we destroyed him to get under that, So, it's obviously a very different dynamic than like a men's open guy that's trying to push the size all year round, right?
It's a risk versus reward thing. And
and for him, the reward is already there. He's already been second at the Olympia twice. We knew after 2018, when he came second, that all he needed to be was sharper. That was it. If he had showed up sharper that year, him and Brandon already split points. If he had been at 100% conditioning, we were almost positive that he could have won that show. So our goal for 2019 wasn't to bring him in 10 pounds heavier with a way improved back. And, you can have all these ideas of, delusions of grandeur that we're going to, all of a sudden he's going to have a Joel Stubbs back in 1 year. And, it's completely outrageous. We know what his weaknesses are and we know what his strengths are. And we just want to make it the best version of what he could be within the time given. That was just to stay healthy, come in at 100% condition. And that's your best bet, right? Like I said, we push in the off season, he has a flare up, then you're even farther behind. So it made no sense for us to start pushing things unless it's completely necessary. And even being that conservative, he still has had flare ups during both 2018 and 2019 preps. He had one this past year when he won. It wasn't as bad as 2018, but he still was, having a significant flare up of his IgA. It did make a resurgence at probably 4 to 6 weeks out. So it becomes very difficult to try and manage that, right? So it's you start putting a little bit of stress on the body. It's and then if you do that in the off season with the extra weight and stuff like that, you're just putting it at so much more risk. So for him, we've just really erred on the side of caution for those, and just he just enjoys his off season. He eats kind of what he feels that he needs to maintain his training performance and the muscle that he does have, or even a slight, surplus to maybe gain a little bit. But we're really not pushing things hard. He doesn't really take anything outside your basic test in his off season. It's just not worth the risk for us. And that's just kind of the way we've chosen to go for it. I mean, we don't think he needs to improve leaps and bounds. We think if he shows up the exact same in 2020 as he did in 2019, we think he'll repeat. Maybe that's arrogant, but I think Brown was pretty much as good as it gets in 2019, and Chris still beat him. So I think if we're not regressing, I think he'll hold on to that title. And I don't think Chris is planning to compete for another 5 or 10 years. So if he can get another 1 or 2 titles under his belt, I think he could, retire young and healthy and be a happy man with a couple Olympia wins under his belt, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. He's got a great look. He's got a unique, it's like a Bob Parisi. Kind of genetics are just there to be a classic guy. I mean, he's perfect for the division. Where he is, I agree. And I think this is like a good topic. Like you were saying earlier, you don't get your driver's license and go on Formula One tracks and try to race like, what's that guy's name? Bubba, whatever the fuck his name is.
Oh yeah.
The guy with the noose.
NASCAR guy, yeah.
NASCAR guy. I won't get into that. But you don't try to just go from point A to point Z. And that said, you probably don't even want to be at point Z when you're 20 years old. You just want to look like Chris Bumstead. That would be like the ideal, right? For most young guys. Mm-hmm. Chris is like, what is he, 250, 260 in the off season?
Yeah, 255, 260, yeah.
It's perfect. I mean, even myself, I like that look. I like that classic look. I mean,
well, Chris also, as much as bodybuilding is important to Chris really wants to live a life outside of bodybuilding as well. And for him, if you follow him on Instagram, he still plays basketball with his buddies, and he still goes biking, and he still, wants to go to the cottage and go swimming and do shit like that. When you're 300 pounds like Joe or I, that shit gets fucking hard. I can't play fucking basketball. I'll jump once, my fucking for a week. So. He still wants to be able to do these things. In the winter, he wants to go to Calabogie and go snowboarding. And, there's things like that that still have a lot of value in his life. So for him, I think having that balance, which I think isn't necessarily, if you're trying to be a successful men's open guy, isn't necessarily the best way to go about it. I think you need that 365 days a year. But I think for where Chris is at, and he's already so competitive, I think to, maintain a bit of, balance in his life and keep him healthy, I think is worth more than anything at this point.
I know from past mistakes I've made as an amateur coming up, I could have done things smarter. And I think that's where I'm going with this. I think, the young people need to acknowledge that there are smarter ways of doing things, and they can look to Chris and look at how he's managing, for your first show, second show, you don't do anything insane. Like, you just have to be smart and have a good coach.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and even in going back to what we said before any of that, you just need to be consistent. I think that's really square one. I mean, I don't think you have any business trying to do a show unless you can adhere to a diet for 6 months straight. If you can adhere to a good diet for 6 months straight and, adhere to a training program where you're progressing through your movements, proper progressive training program and, through a proper progressive diet for 6 months, okay, then consider it. But if you can't diet for a month without, falling off the wagon or being like, oh, I didn't want to eat today, so I ate nothing. Or, oh, I'm going to take a week off training because I'm tired. I mean, let's be serious. 99% of the amateur competitors, or even a lot of pros, do this kind of stuff. I mean, it's just like, man, I didn't feel like it today. And, I think the number one thing is just getting into that routine of consistency. And, you can, like you said with Joe, like you can call it OCD, but I don't think it's OCD more than it's just, that's the structure that you need to have to be the best bodybuilder. And I think this is with any sport. I mean, with track and field, with football, it's not necessarily going to be with diet, but there's going to be some aspect of the training that is pertinent to the absolute maximal success with it. And you need to get in the routine of that being just life. It can't be like, oh, this is my diet, I have to follow it every day. It's just, no, these are my meals. I wake up, I eat them every day. That's just my life. It's not anything special. It's not anything weird. It's just, this is what I do every day. And that's just how it is. So when you stop looking at it as like a diet like that, and just looking at it as like, I need to eat my 6 meals every day because this is just what I need to do. This is just life, and I think people need to stop looking at it as such a negative aspect, right?
Yeah, but it's totally inflexible. And that causes issues, with all types of things, like other relationships and whatnot, interactions with other people, because people just aren't understanding of bodybuilding. in general.
No, and I understand that, but I also think that people, the bodybuilders themselves can also, like, even though it's inflexible, bodybuilders also are kind of fucking idiots with this kind of stuff. And I mean, you can still go over to your buddy's house for a barbecue and eat your own food. You can still, go to your parents' house for Christmas dinner and weigh your turkey. I mean, it might be weird to some people, but you can still partake in all your daily life shit and still be a good bodybuilder. I refuse to think that you have to completely shun the world to be a good bodybuilder. I just don't think that's reality. I think some people do it that way and they're perfectly successful. And I mean, I've done it that way too. And it's worked fine for me, but I don't think it has to be that way. I think you can still eat all your meals and you can still train every day and you can still go hang out with your friends and you can still go to the beach and you can still do all of the shit you want to do, as long as your time management is good, and you're willing to, maybe look a little weird in front of your friends or your family for a few times until they understand the dynamic of what you're trying to do. The first time you show up at Christmas dinner with weighed out chicken and rice, they might be like, what the fuck's this guy doing? But you do that one Christmas, 2 Christmas, 3 Christmas in a row, people stop asking questions, so I think that's just what it is. I mean, it's the same thing with my friends. I mean, any of my friends now, it's just normal. It's, at first it's kind of like, this guy, fucking party pooper, doesn't want to drink. It doesn't, but over time, it's like, I can still partake in all the same things. I can still go over to my buddies and, we can go out to the bar and watch UFC or whatever, and I'll just eat my own food or whatever. It's not a big deal now. So, I think bodybuilders as a whole need to be more flexible than they are without being flexible, if that makes sense, Like be flexible with the things you can and don't be flexible with the things you can't. And that's it,
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Sometimes I see a lot of inflexibility and I think but even being flexible, some people aren't understanding. My parents still call me. My mom, like I'm going over for my birthday, which is Canada Day. So I'm like, hey, so what's going on? They're like, well, what are you eating? So they always need to know, what are you eating now? Like, what kind of diet are you on? Eat any cake? It's like, no, mom. Year after year, it's like.
Oh, and I mean, and some people will never get it. I mean, that's just a reality. I mean, even Melissa's family, I'm a top tier bodybuilder. Chris is Mr. Olympia. Melissa's one of the top figure girls in the world. And even when I'll go there, we could all be in prep for the Olympia and they could make dinner and they'd be like, well, you guys want dessert? And it's like, you clearly know none of us can have dessert and you still ask the question. So it's like, there is people that still will kind of never really get it. Or if they're still just asking out of a courtesy, I don't quite know. It's just, some people are always going to be like that, but you just, take it in stride. Like, no, I'm good, but I mean, like, my mom's
deep in prep. Does that ever annoy you?
Not me, no. Cause I mean, I have no emotional connection with food whatsoever. So like, I'm not bothered, but I could be a week out and someone could eat McDonald's with me and like, I could care less, it really doesn't bother me. But someone like Melissa or Chris, yeah, they would definitely get more agitated than I would for sure.
Joe, you?
Well, like you said, like just this past weekend, I went to visit my family and I just brought my food with me. And my mom, she always will ask me if I'm going to eat what she made. And I just be like, no, I'm dieting. I'm not going to eat it. And, it is what it is. And I'm like with Iain, like if someone, whether it's someone I'm dating or a friend or whatever the situation is, like if they want to eat something, I'm like, oh, go for it. I don't care. I'll bring my food with me. It's not a big deal. Like you can still go to social events, go hang out with your friends, whatever the case. I think the biggest thing is just being prepared and being willing to, stick with it, not use that excuse that it's like, oh, I'm dieting. This is so terrible, blah, 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 woe is me type thing. And it's like, it should be more of a lifestyle, like day in, day out than feeling like you're stuck to some shitty diet,
At the end of the day, it's a choice. We're choosing to do this because we enjoy it. If you start not doing other things in your life you don't enjoy, then why the fuck are you doing it? You know what I mean? Like it makes no sense. If you just disregard everything else and you're enjoyable, like your friends and your family and, all the social outings for one thing, like you've really lost sight of the whole point of this, haven't you? It's like the point of bodybuilding is to bring something positive to my life. I like bodybuilding. I like training. I like dieting. I like the challenge, of seeing what I can, put my body, what I can make my body look like.
Yeah.
These things are enjoyable to me. And if I start, not enjoying the diet and not doing things I like because of it, it's like, it's getting pretty diluted in the point of it all at that point for me,
Yeah. I never understood people who complain in prep. Like in the people who do, they fucking complain. Like it doesn't stop. And it's
I mean, I can understand people obviously being agitated because they're hungry and I get it. But like, you just have to think back at the end of it. Like I said, it's a choice. We're choosing to do this. No one's forcing you to do it. If you don't like being hungry and you don't like, stuffing your face in the off season, you don't have to do it. I mean, just don't do it. It's easy as that. You don't like to do it, don't do it. Okay. It's like, I don't like to run marathons. So guess what? I don't run marathons. It's just that simple. Like, if you don't want to do it, just don't do it, So yeah, I mean, I understand people complaining, but there becomes a point where it kind of gets confusing to me, as like, why are you doing this then?
Yeah,
I think a lot of this is, nowadays is social media driven. It's a lot of, pressure and stuff. People have friends that compete and they want to do it too. And, there's so many different reasons now, but, I think if you're not really doing it for you, you're never going to be successful with it.
Yeah, I think anything you do in life has to be, you've got to have that intrinsic drive and passion.
Yeah.
If you love what you're doing, then why the fuck are you doing it? It's
exactly
not a question.
Yeah, I mean, and then also it comes down to the other side of that. Like, I don't think any of us love doing this every single day. I mean, there's tons of days that I'm like, fuck this. I don't want to eat my food. I don't want to do this. I don't like this. I want to retire. I mean, we all have that days, but it's at the end of the day, you just have to remember why you started and what your end goal is, and that you do truly love it, and just kind of, remember what you're doing it all for. Right.
Yeah. And nothing easy is gratifying. I mean, you're not going to pick something and just fly through it and then it's going to be gratifying. Like, if you're going to college for a bird degree, like a shitty degree, or if you're competing and it's not going to be gratifying, then why are you doing it too? That's the other thing. It's not going to be easy. The challenge is what makes it interesting, right?
Yeah.
But one last question, because we're at an hour and 3 minutes. Do you guys want to go to
Yeah, I'm good. Keep going.
Oh, okay. I wanted to talk about Mr. Olympia because, well, the competitive season in general, there have been so many changes over the years. I mean, we saw Kai obviously drop out, 4 or 5 years ago, I think it's. Then Phil decided to hang it up. I think he might be coming back. We're not sure.
He's coming back.
What's that?
He's coming back.
He's coming back this year?
Not this year, but he's coming back, yeah.
Joe? He's coming back?
I have no idea. I'd like to see him come back, to be honest, just being a fan of bodybuilding, but
from
I
what
have no idea.
Heard, from what my sources had said, that he was planning to do the Athletic Con this year, that he was getting paid a good chunk of change to do Athletic Con this year, and that was going to be his goal. The show has now been moved to next year, so obviously, he can't do Athletic Con this year. So whether he decides to do it next year or he pushes into the Olympia next year, I'm not sure. But from what I've heard, he was planning to do Athletic Con this year.
Okay. Well, Dennis Wolf is out too. Dexter Jackson, I assume, is gone. And Sean Road.
Dexter's doing the Olympia this year, and then he's done.
Yeah, then he's done. And Sean Road. But I'm talking about the future. Like, let's say 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Where do you see it heading? This is what I want to know. Like, who do you guys see being the key players? Because, I look at Rolly and I look at Brendan Curry, and who else is there right now in the mix?
At the top, I mean, the guys that are still have some longevity in them. Brandon's still pretty young. Steve Kucklow is still pretty young. I think Bonek's still good a few years now. Ramy's still very young. Then you have guys, like Sergio. Sergio's not young, but he's still improving well. And then there's a whole field of those kind of, guys that are second call-out guys now that are going to have to move up and be the first call-out guys, like the Nathan Dashes and stuff like that. So,
and yourself? Yourself, you see yourself?
I haven't been a second call at the Olympia yet to make that claim. So, if I show up this year and I'm in the top 8 or top 10, then yeah, I'll say that. But, I got to earn my stripes before I can make those kind of claims, right? So.
You were like this close though. What place?
I was middle of the third. Like I was of the call out I was in. I was first place in that call out. So
right. So you're close.
I ended up 14th. But no, I mean it's if I can crack a top 10, then maybe that can be a conversation. But until then, I mean, there's still some guys ahead of me that that I think are the next in line to be up in those top 5s. So yeah, I mean, I think once you have Sean out, Dexter out, Phil out, then you're going to have, your first call-outs are going to be looking more like Bonak, Ramy, Steve Kucklow, Cedric, depending on how much he continues to go. Those are going to be your kind of guys that are going to be your first call-out kind of guys, right?
Cedric's a variable because I see him moving further out every year.
Yeah, he moves out farther every year, but now he's with Redcon, which is going to keep him a little more in the mix of, the world of bodybuilding, which I think will be good for him. And I think a little pressure from Aaron and those guys, will kind of keep his head on straight in the bodybuilding world a bit. So that could be a positive thing for him, I think. But I mean, he's also not 25 years old. He's mid to late 30s, so that obviously is more timed than some guys. But yeah, no, I think there's still a good crop of guys, and I think there's guys that are going to be really improving in the next few years that will move up and take those spots. I mean, I think guys like Quinton. I think James Hollingshead is going to be improving a lot. I think there's guys like that are going to make big jumps in the next few years. So I think those guys will make a big move up for sure.
Okay, good. Joe, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, like I'd agree with him on like pretty much all those, and I'd say another guy just to add in that I think will be like up and coming in like the next few years, just because like we haven't really seen him compete yet, is Hunter Labrada.
Big time, yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about that on our last podcast because somebody juxtaposed pictures of Iain and Hunter. So I don't know, did you see that? It was Bodybuilding Without Borders, or
yeah, I've seen it. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of talk about that because we're probably the two, most fortunate teams, the guys doing Tampa right now.
Yeah.
So I definitely understand people making the comparisons, and I think, gauging his rate of progress, if you even look at how he looks now compared to when he turned pro last year, I mean, he's improved leaps and bounds in just that 1 year. And from 2018 to 19, his improvements were just as staggering. So I think on the trajectory he's on a very fast track to be a very good bodybuilder. And obviously, he's got such a good, foundation of people around him. I mean, his dad's Lee Labrada. I mean, he trains with, what's his name? With Patrick Moore. So I mean, he's got a really good, field of guys around him, which I think will be, really pertinent to his success over the next few years for sure.
Yeah. Patrick Moore, you didn't mention him, Iain. Do you see him? He needs to grow a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be a controversial one on this because I think I like Patrick, and I think Patrick does have a lot of potential, but I don't buy into the same hype that I think everybody else is buying into. I think he did really well in that one Olympia. Well, no, he didn't play super high, but I think he got a lot of traction in that one Olympia because you had an Olympia with a lot of guys that were in subpar condition, and he had a very good polished physique. I think if you'd put that same physique in a lot of other lineups, it wouldn't have been as competitive. And then the Arnold, you can see where, he doesn't show up at 100% crisp, how much he's lacking when that conditioning is not at 100%, right? You can see that there's still some, pretty glaring weaknesses in his physique. His legs are still pretty undersized, he still has a lot of growing. I mean, for a guy that's probably, 5'10", 5'11", he's only competing in, the low to mid 230s, I think, right? So, guys that are being competitive at that same weight, that same height, are usually competing 20, 30 pounds heavier than that, So, I mean, obviously if you have a very pretty shape, you can get away with a lot more. But I mean, someone that's comparable size, I mean, you take someone like Regan, he's still competing in the 240s to 250s, and he's not a big guy by any stretch, and he's still competing at 15 to 20 pounds heavier than someone like Patrick, right? That's a guy with a very pretty aesthetic shape, a little bit on the taller side. So, I think, he's still got some growing to do. But Patrick's also not super, super young. Patrick's a little late out the gate than this. He's not as young as someone like Hunter or Joe or I. I think he's in his late 30s, isn't he?
I think he's 39, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the clock's ticking for him, and I don't know if he'll reach that level before the clock kind of times out for him. I think he'll be a competitive guy, and will he be probably a top 8, top 7 Olympia guy at some point? Sure. He's got really good structure. I think if he keeps growing a little bit and puts on 10 pounds, he can definitely be in the mix, but I don't see him being an Olympia champion or an Arnold champion or anything like that. I mean, if he watches this, I apologize for the harsh critique, but I'm trying to keep it as real as possible. I don't think, or maybe it's just me, I just don't see what other people are seeing with him quite as much, I think conditioning is such a thing that anyone can achieve. And if you get a lineup where everyone's in shape, his physique doesn't shine nearly as much to me. So, I think prime example, if you put him when I used Vancouver Pro this year, he really shined at the Olympia this year. But I think if you put him in a show like Vancouver Pro, when you had guys that were all peeled out of their mind, like Lucas Osdale and Nathan and Hottie, even you're going into 6th, 7th place, you had someone like, like Quinton, who was in really good shape, or Samson Dauda, you know, like guys like that. I mean, I think that he would have had a hard time staying next to those guys, you know. Structurally, he's less actually than someone like Quinton or Samson. You know, he's not as good structurally, those guys. He has less muscle. You know, he might have been in a little better condition, but he still would have been in worse condition than any of us in the top four, than me or Hottie or any of those guys. So, you know, I think he just shined in a specific lineup, and I think that won't happen again to that degree, you know?
Yeah. It's an interesting dynamic, because I've heard some people say that he could convert over to classic, and I don't know what your thoughts.
No, he couldn't convert to classic. He's too big for classic, and I think how his structure is, I think if he compromised a little tissue, if he lost 10 pounds, say, I think he would look significantly worse from a shape perspective, not better. I don't think he would look better if he lost weight. I mean, like prime example is Regan. When Regan tried to cut down and do classic, his shape and his physique looked significantly worse, you know? So, you know, the idea is there, but I just don't see it happening. I also don't think, even though he has a very good shape for an open bodybuilder, I don't see his shape as a classic physique guy. You know, his structure is that of a well-shaped men's open guy. It's not that, in my mind, of a classic physique competitor. You know, I think when you start to compare it to the guys that are really shapely and classic, like a Steve Lorius or Bumstead, or even, you know, some of the smaller guys like Brand Chen or Keon. Well, Keon's moved to 212 now, but those kind of guys, you know, I don't think he's as good shape as them. So I think he would have a tough time in classic for sure. You know, I think he would look like a bodybuilder that tried to lose weight, and I think it would look a little awkward.
Interesting.
I think he would also, I mean, for his height, he'd probably also have to be like low 200s, right? Like 210, 212, which, I mean, for him, you drop 15, 20 pounds off that physique, it's not going to look too pretty. I can tell you that, you know?
Yeah. Well, you look at George Peterson, and he used to compete, but I guess that's apples and oranges. Peterson didn't have the nicest flow, and he was.
No, but Patrick does have good flow. That's the thing. Patrick has good flow. You know, people like Patrick because he has a good shape. You know, George was just doing so well in classic because he could make the weight, and he was the best bodybuilder in the classic physique division. That was it.
He was peeled, though.
He was peeled out of it. Exactly. He was the best bodybuilder there. He had the most muscularity. He was the best from the back shots. His conditioning was outrageous. He was out bodybuilding good classic guys, and that's really all it was. And I mean, I think that's a lot with Brayon as well. Brayon is a good classic shape, but I think he's a very, very good bodybuilder. You know, he comes in with a lot of muscularity. His conditioning's exceptional. His posing's really good. And I think, and that's why he was beating Chris. He was out bodybuilding Chris. Chris is better from a classic dynamic. You know, he has better shape. He has better flow to his physique.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, from the classic pose standpoint, he's definitely superior. But when he was showing up in slightly less condition, he wasn't as full as he could be. Brayon was out bodybuilding Chris, and that's really what it came down to. And when Chris was, you know, better conditioned this year, Chris's ability as a classic person outweighed that of Brayon's bodybuilding ability, right? So, you know, I think for Patrick, his shape is good, but not good enough. And he still, if he lost the weight, he wouldn't be at a muscularity advantage. That's what I'm looking at. He wouldn't be the best shaped guy in classic, and he also wouldn't be the most muscular. So it would be like, you'd kind of be like settling at a middle ground just to get into a class where you think you could be more competitive. But I think his potential in men's open is higher than it is in classic.
Yeah. Man, we've covered a lot today, like a lot more than I had planned, actually. So this is really good. And it's going on in an hour and 20 minutes just about. So I don't want to keep you guys from your prep. I know you're deep into prep and you're probably hungry. I'm assuming you have a meal to eat. I know Joe probably has a meal to eat.
You always got a meal to eat.
I have to get my hair cut in like 30 minutes. And Iain, I wanted to mention your haircuts are always on point now.
Thank you. Melissa's been doing my hair.
Has she really?
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Wow.
Because I mean, I'm not cutting the top, right? I've let the top just grow. Like the top of my hair is getting really long. So it's easy to learn to cut the sides. So we just learned to do a fade on the sides, which is super easy. And then I just let the top grow. So it's been pretty easy for me. Yeah. If I needed to like get the top cut and restyled, I'd probably go see a barber, because that's like getting into scissor cutting, which is a little more complex. But, you know, to do a fade on the sides, you just do a number 4, 3, 2, and then blend the lines in. That's pretty easy for us to do. So we've managed to do that. I mean, the first one was like a little shoddy. You know, we had to kind of redo it at once. But then after you get it, you know, do it 1 or 2 more times, you kind of start to get the groove of it. And it's more just a confidence thing. Like you ask Melissa to cut your hair, she's so terrified she's going to fuck it up. She doesn't want to do it, you know? He's like, no, I won't do it. If I mess it up, you'll be mad at me. I'm like, yo, I ain't going anywhere right now. If you fuck it up, it's not a big deal. And if you do, I'll just shave my damn head. I don't care either. So,
It's
once
better than what we're working with.
Yeah, once they get the confidence of not worrying that you're going to be mad at them and they just like do their thing with their instincts, most people know how to cut hair pretty well if you just like go for it. I think it's really the fear of fucking it up that really messes with people's heads,
I don't know, man. I can draw a straight line. You wouldn't want me fuck your hair up pretty bad.
The thing with hair is it's actually a lot more forgiving unless you're shaving in like hard lines. Like to do a fade, you don't have to be like super intricate with the lines of the fade. I mean, you just have to do it and kind of blend the lines out. You really don't need any intricacy. As long as you don't like accidentally slip up and shave your hair off. I mean, it's pretty simple to do. So a couple YouTube videos and you'll learn pretty quick.
When I was talking about Iain being a jack of all trades, I didn't know he'd go off about hair too.
Yeah, but I don't cut the hair. I haven't cut the hair. Melissa's cut the hair, so I'm not going to take
the logistics of how to cut hair.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm going to leave it at that. And I think, Joe, we should title this video something in there about Phil Heath coming back to the Olympia. Because that's
clickbait.
Iain Valliere. Guess.
Don't do that to me. I don't know that much.
Still, whatever. It'll draw. It's clickbait, right?
Yeah, that's funny.
Clickbait's where it's at.
Clickbait's all the rage now, yeah.
All the rage. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course, yes.
I mean, honestly, I'm humbled because, having someone at your level on the show, like Mr. Olympia here, Mr. Olympia, top, I'm going to say top 10, top 10 guy.
We'll hope. I just got to get there first. That's.
I was telling Joe the other day.
Show and get to the fucking show,
Yeah, and Joe soon, on the big stage, where. But I was telling Joe the other day, it's like, you guys have your thing, and you're gonna remember being on the Olympia stage or competing in pro shows, and I'm gonna be like, I did a podcast with those guys. That'll be my legacy.
Yeah, it's all different, man. I mean, we all have different things. I mean, it's for some people, I'm sure Joe Rogan gets way more gratification out of doing a podcast than he ever would going on an Olympia stage, right? So, I mean, it's different strokes for different folks, right? So, I mean, but you still have you still enjoy bodybuilding, you still enjoy lifting. So, I mean, you still get your fix of that. And I mean, you get to also do this where I know you're a very inquisitive person. So I think the podcast is a good fit for you. So, you're getting kind of, best of both worlds with this.
I get to live in the world. That's all that matters,
Well, exactly. And you also get to learn while you're doing it. I mean, it's fun to do this and talk to different people and, learn for yourself as well. And, talk to different people about their different approaches on stuff. So it's fun for sure.
Definitely. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here. And Joe, thank you for this opportunity. And I hope we can keep doing these with, as many pros as we can get on, or as many big personalities. So let's plan for the next one. Iain, you're always welcome on any.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
We'll get Big Ramy on, and you can join.
Yeah, that's next week.
Maybe you can get Phil Heath on next week too to talk about if he's doing the Olympia or not.
That's right. That's right. You can hook it up, right, Iain? People know people, right? I just gotta say, like, when Dave Palumbo asks you questions about like what's going on, have you noticed he does this to every pro? He's like, so when's the Olympia happening this year?
Well, because he thinks that we all have some information that he doesn't. It's like, I spend all the time with Chris, who's literally the Olympia champion, and he doesn't know any more than anybody else, Like, we don't know shit. I mean, we knew a few things, like, when Athleticon was happening, because they had invited Chris to it, we had some inside access of, what the dynamic with that, the prize money, and the invitation system with that. We knew some stuff about that. But, I mean, other than that, we really don't know shit. I mean, we're just flying under the same radar that everybody else is. I mean, I wish I knew, what was going on in the behind the big curtain, but I mean, we don't know anything more than anybody else.
I just find it funny how Palumbo just tries to like extract information out of everyone.
He's trying to get some little bit of like some little clip that he can use as a clickbait title, say, the Olympia is going to be here. I heard it from this guy, and then he can say Olympia, blah blah blah. You could get a title out of it by just one small sound clip, which I understand, or someone maybe if you ask enough, some person will have a some kind of inside information, give you something, but. I mean, I don't know shit, man.
The Athleticon sounds. I'm a big Dwayne Johnson fan. Joe and I have talked about this how the industry is moving in a different direction. I think because of guys like Dwayne Johnson, or it could potentially, move into a different direction. That's what I want to see. More monetization, more sponsorships, better sponsorships, like at least getting the community involved in bodybuilding and the average. And I know it's never going to be a mainstream sport, but let's get it to a point where we have a fan base. The fitness industry has a fan base. There's more and more people getting into it. Like, let's get some bigger sponsors, better sponsors. And I'm not saying the supplement companies aren't good sponsors, but golf players, they get like Tag Her, and we could at least get Jeep or something to take a look at our contracts. I think bodybuilders can be very appealing to certain demographics, and I want to see Dwayne introduce
you just need someone that can bridge that gap, and I think The Rock is the perfect person for that. He's got
The Rock
enough mainstream traction, but he also is kind of into the bodybuilding world that I think he could be someone that can bridge that gap. And obviously, like you said, it's never going to be a mainstream thing because of obviously the dark side of the the performance enhancing substances and stuff like that are used in it. It's never going to be a super mainstream. It's always going to have that stigma. But I still think that, especially with how much social media presence and influence a lot of bodybuilders and fitness athletes have, I think for more mainstream brands to get in and to tap into that avenue of using these kind of competitors as endorsement opportunities, I think could be of huge benefit to both the bodybuilders and those companies. I mean, if you look at the social media world, I mean, fitness personalities are some of the biggest across the world in terms of social media influence, right? The average bodybuilder, average pro bodybuilder, without even trying on Instagram, is having way more than the average, golfer or stuff like that, right? So, I think that the potential is there for a good opportunity for both the brands as well as the bodybuilders. There just needs to be someone that makes the first step and says like, yo, these aren't a bunch of just crazy drug addicts. These are athletes that really try, and there is a lot of, endorsement opportunities here and advertising opportunities here. And I think once that ball gets rolling, I think there is some good potential there. So I mean, the sky's the limit. I think an endeavor like Athleticon is definitely, where you're kind of, bodybuilding is definitely not going to be the pinnacle event at that. It's going to be one event of a million. It's not going to be like Arnold, it's going to be, a massive sports, expo and trade show, and a bunch of different events. I mean, like they could have UFC title fights there, which are obviously going to outshine a bodybuilding event, right? So I think just to kind of have it in the same echelon as all these mainstream sports might kind of bring a more mainstream crowd into bodybuilding, and then bring the mainstream sponsors. And, I think it'll kind of fall like a waterfall effect. So I could definitely see that happening. I think the Athleticon is definitely the best thing for bodybuilding that's happened in a long time, for sure.
Yeah, I see a resurgence like we had from the 70s when you had Arnold Schwarzenegger. And, Dwayne Johnson or The Rock is akin to like Schwarzenegger. He's a superstar, action star, and he's like the everyday guy, but he can bridge bodybuilding back somewhat into the mainstream. I think he's actually got more power than Arnold had, and we have more of a resurgence now than ever. So this is the time. So it's guys like you, Joe.
All it takes is one big company, one company like a Ford or an Under Armour or a Nike to be like, hey, this is an opportunity, and be like, sponsor Flex Lewis or sponsor one of these guys. And once that ball gets rolling and those companies realize what these athletes can do for them, I think it'll start to go from there, because I mean, a company like that, if they start doing, more fitness-based apparel around training and stuff like that, and you get a, athlete, someone that's like super prominent on social media, like a Flex Lewis, and start wearing, throwing him in Nike clothes or Under Armour clothes and do a Flex Lewis brand. And, I think that would be huge for them. And I think that would be big for the bodybuilding industry. So I think it'd be a very good, mutually beneficial thing. It's just someone just needs to have the balls to be the first one to do it. And, at least with this Athleticon is definitely getting the foot in the door, to kind of get people kind of intermingling in those circles. And I think once one company does it and it just has the nutsack to say, hey, maybe this is something we could do, I think it'll start rolling. So.
Yeah, I totally agreed. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thanks for coming on, Iain. Joe, again, thank you for this opportunity to come on again and do these podcasts. So let's plan for the future, and thank you for watching, everyone. Make sure you subscribe to Joe's channel. Joe will have the information, I guess, No, you'll have all your contact. You do have all your contact info under your profile, right? For your YouTube?
Yeah. It's all in my profile. Yeah.
Okay. And Iain, do you have anything that you want to say before going?
No, just thanks for having me on. I mean, if you guys, anyone that's watching this, follow me on Instagram, I guess. But I mean, other than that, I mean, no, I just appreciate you guys having me. It's always fun to do these kind of things. So,
what's your Instagram again, Iain?
just IFBB Iain, but Iain is spelled IAIN, not IAN. So IFBB IAIN.
Okay. And Joe, your Instagram again is Coach Little Joe?
Yeah, just Coach Little Joe.
All right, guys, it's a wrap. Thank you again, and we'll talk soon. And good luck with the preps. You guys kill it.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you.
See ya.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.